Good evening. It is Monday, the 17th of July, 2023. It's just gone 8:30 p.m. here in the UK. And this is part of my journey, episode 34. I have my very special guest, DJ Kat, who's going to be talking to us very shortly. She was the 45th woman DJ to do a 45-day mix, and we celebrated that. Obviously, we promote women DJs, we promote kid DJs, promote men DJs, we promote lots of things like that. And so it's great to be able to promote her and also talk about mental health. This is part of my journey, my mental health talk show, because there's a lot to talk about. And she invited me on her show a little while ago on Instagram, and that was great. And I really appreciated that opportunity and being honored to do that. So I was like, let's get you back on and let's find a little bit more about you. But I'm hoping it's going to be a fun show. Also going to talk about some serious stuff. But without further ado, we have DJ Kat. How you doing?
Greetings. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing all right, actually. I'm going to say hello to Barty Cuts, who's come in. He's saying thanks for having me this weekend. We've just come off the back of 45 hours of 45's live stream as part of my 2,000 followers on Twitch, and Barty Cuts played the penultimate hour, and I was a guest star on his show. So yeah, it's been really positive, and great bringing the community together. And we'll talk a little bit about that, because obviously you've got a community as well that are certainly reggae and extended. But yeah, no, I'm good. So what I do with all of my guests is I always like to find out where their musical influences first came about. It's usually from a young age. And so for you, was it family, friends, parents, siblings? Who was it who first got you into music?
To be honest, it was more to do with finding my identity.
Okay.
Around 16, 17 kind of age. I found out that my grandfather is Jamaican. He was born there. He came to the UK, a part of the
Right.
Windrush generation.
Okay.
And because I didn't know that, I wanted to know all about it. I wanted to know everything to do with what it means, the whole concept of his journey. I was very interested and getting to know my Caribbean family.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the interest built up really from there.
And what sort of age was that then?
It was about, like I said, about 16, 17, roughly around that age. Yeah.
And so that got you into trying to appreciate the music and the culture?
Well, it did, but it was more to do with I wanted to know who I am, so more my history and my story.
Yeah.
And at that same time, I was going through some adverse situations in school where I wasn't really kind of I wasn't accepted in school at all. Once I
Okay.
found out my Caribbean heritage, I wanted to display, I was wearing red, gold, and green. I was very out there with who I am.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't taken, as you can imagine, in the best way possible. So music was kind of my thing to hold on to and find out who I am, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And music is so important for so many reasons, but obviously for you to find who you are, that's even more important. So what sort of music was it? Was it reggae full on at that time, or were you listening to other stuff as well?
Well, one of the very first tunes that I was kind of introduced to, which was my uncle, who was a massive influence. I was introduced. The very first tune was "Redemption Song" by Bob Marley,
Yeah.
um, and it was a life changer because the lyrics. If you really, I like messages in music. I'm not really.
Yep.
I like the beat and the rhythm, but it's the message for me more so. And once I heard that tune, I was like, right, okay, he's talking about prophecy. He's talking about redemption. What does that mean? So I looked further into his history, found out about Haile Selassie I, Marcus Garvey, and the history just kept on continuing. And then I found other artists that were speaking of that, and it really resonated with me. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely the message because you did, I think, you did an uplifting mix first, a
Yeah.
45-minute mix, and I think you did a 33 mix as well, maybe, and also a 45-day. But it was really uplifting, positive, lyrical, amazing music, and I think that's why I really appreciate it. I play a lot of reggae, and it's nice to hear other people play stuff that, firstly, you haven't heard, but also that is just full of this positive message. So that's great.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. And so from there, how did it come about? Did you start buying? Were you buying records at that stage, or did that come a little bit later?
So at first, I've always been into CDs. I think it started off with CDs, if I'm truly
Yeah.
honest. Because one, they were cheaper,
Yeah.
and two, it was the quickest way to, download something, put it onto a CD, and you've
Yeah.
got it, kind of thing. Whereas I think as I got older, I'm like, I'm not for 30 now, and as I got older, I was like, you know what? I really appreciate opening up a vinyl and
Yeah.
reading the words, looking at having it physically, and it's kind of you brought it and it's in your hands. And the very first album I got, or vinyl I got, should I say, was by Bob Marley, Rastaman Vibration.
Yeah.
And it had all the lyrics in there on that album. And you could learn the words with it, or you could do whatever you needed to do, to get to know what it was saying and figure out what meant this, what meant that. And it was really intriguing to me. And it just kind of grew from there, bit by bit, as I got some more money, as I got some more this, more that, and more interest on different artists, then I would kind of buy a record that was pleasing to me. So yeah.
It's amazing because I think a lot of us, I mean, you've said your age, I'm a little bit older than you, but a lot of us have started with vinyl, which I did, and then moved to CDs and then digital DJing, and then was like, actually, I quite miss playing with vinyl. So then you end up back with the 45s, which is where I've ended up. But it's interesting to hear, obviously, having started from CDs, you then moved on to wanting the format, a vinyl format, because there is something about it. Like you say, you're holding, I describe it a little bit like you're holding a piece of history. That record was recorded in a certain place and it's pressed in a certain place and it's got a bit of history in it. An MP3, copied. It doesn't quite have the same sort of
Yeah.
gravitas, do you think?
Yeah, I think you are right, in the sense of being able to say, I have this story. And I see artists as storytellers, to be honest.
Yeah.
And they tell their story in little snippets, and you get a piece of their thought process and what they're going through at that time, or what they see in the world at that time. And a lot of the foundational artists of reggae, you can play them now and they still have that resonance. You can still say, actually, that's happening now, and you can have that mindset. Yeah, and it's really that kind of aspect to music that I like, is the message of it, and then it's out there, but then you can hold it, if that makes sense. It's really strange, but you can hold it in your hand.
We were talking about this. We did a little event in Brighton yesterday, and we were talking about the DJs.
Yeah.
It's like I was going to do a festival, Boomtown, and I was going to take vinyl. And then a few days before, they said we haven't got decks, and I was like, right. So I digitized some of my vinyl and had some, and I played it, and I was playing the same songs, but it wasn't the same because I wasn't playing with the records.
Yeah,
It's just a weird thing. I think you get used to the format and the fact that you're touching the music and manipulating it and moving it back and forward. And that's another important aspect of vinyl, I think.
Yeah, that's true. But I also think that because of the times that we're in the sense that everywhere seems to be moving to digital, we have to be able every so often to adapt. So I don't mind playing on CDs, and
no.
I'm less comfortable with USB and things like that. But if I had to, in the sense of that all they had and the people wanted to hear the music, I would have to play on that, and be adaptable to what's happening. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so from starting to buy records and then sort of expanding your collection, when did you get to the point where you got into DJing, and who sort of got you into that?
So DJing for me, I started from about roughly the same age, around 16, 17.
Okay.
And I started to DJ because, like I said, I was looking at the messages, hearing the messages, and not just playing them. So I was listening, hearing what was being said. And I always feel that these messages need to be heard, from every possible walks of life, whether you are black, white, rich, poor, whatever you want to say you are. There were very important messages that were being transmitted to me, and they were helping me, resonating with me. And I thought, there can't just be me that's thinking this, there must be others. And that's kind of where the love started. And I went into a community radio station called Hills FM here in the UK, just down the road at the time. And I knocked on the door, about 16 years old, and said, I want to learn how to DJ, I want to be on the radio. And we used to we used to do like little youth talks and you know, play some tunes here and there, and it just developed from there. Where like you see now, I'm on different radio stations across the world and so on. So it was just about kind of transmitting the message to everyone that could hear it. That was where it came from, really.
That's amazing. We're going to pause there for a second. Just say like to a couple of people. We've got Mixter Hoffman in the house. We've got Polly Ever After. She's a huge reggae and dub fan. Comes to our 45 Dubs events. And then we've got DeBourbon, who did his debut on the last 45 Dubs. So yeah, we've got some reggae heads in the house, which is good.
Hey.
But yeah, like I said, your mixes came across really uplifting, and it is the message, because you know, you're either playing music to entertain people in terms of getting them to dance, or you're playing music just as background music. But when you've got the ability like we have to sort of express ourselves through the music we play, and we're not sort of trying to please anyone else, we're just trying to please, it is generally comes out as positive music,
Yeah,
and it's positive vibes. And like you say, if you're feeling those positive vibes off that record and it's helping you, imagine what it could do to someone else.
yeah.
Hence why I do these sort of shows, because you know, we talk about things, and then you know, if one person watches this and gets something from it, it's worth doing, isn't it?
100%. I always go off the motto of that is about the quality that you're putting out rather than quantity. Because you know,
Yeah,
nowadays people want likes and loves and all
yeah,
these things on social media, whatever you call it. And it is actually about what is being put out there rather than just kind of we're doing this because we want, I don't know, 10,000 likes.
yeah.
It means more to me than just that personally.
And it's interesting you say that, because obviously I said we've just come off the back of the 45 hours of DJing on a live stream, and that was to celebrate 2K. But then it wasn't about, I wasn't celebrating, oh, I've got to this number. It was like,
Mm,
you know, in the last 3.5 years, there's this massive, amazing community of
yeah.
like-minded people, positive, supportive people. Let's have a party and let's do it
Yeah.
online for 45 hours, get as many people as possible involved, and then build each other up. And we did it for 1K for Svelanski about a month ago, and the positivity that came off that was amazing. So I was like, I've got to do this. And it's amazing positivity that comes from music. All of us playing music we love and we want other people to hear.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. I think as long as it comes from a place of love, I
Yeah.
can't see there being any issue. I think it's just when something's put out with no real thought or
Yeah.
kind of process to it as to why it's being put out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Okay. So you're starting DJing. You've knocked on. Did you say it was a community hall that you knocked on the door and asked to go on and be a radio DJ?
Yeah, it's like a little community. It was a community radio. Little
Okay.
community radio. They're still going to this day.
Amazing.
Called Hills FM. And pretty much, I'm from Coventry, I live in Coventry, and that was the radio station that everybody went to and kind of started off from at,
Okay.
from that point. And yeah, since then, it's just grown and grown to different radio stations, different kind of outlets, and it just keeps expanding, as you know. So,
I mean, it's firstly amazing that that stuff exists and still exists, and
mm,
it's great. But also that they're open enough to say, "Yeah, go on then, have a go. You know, come and do it, have a
yeah,
show or whatever." Because we've all got to start somewhere, haven't we? And it's the same with what we do with the 45 kids, because we're trying to encourage our kids to get into music, because we've seen how amazing music can be. It's
mm,
great that there's opportunities like that for young people to get involved in what could be a career, but even if it's not a career, it's a lot of fun and you meet a lot of cool people, don't you?
yeah, that's it, 100%. And I think as well, just having people around you to kind of show you some guidance
Yeah,
in the right way. There's guidance and then there's right guidance.
yeah,
you know, and as a young person, I wanted to watch, and reggae was my kind of key goal. So I would purposely go in and watch all the reggae DJs, see what they do, how they move,
yeah,
how they talk, everything. I would watch them. And there was probably about 4 or 5 predominant reggae DJs at that time on the radio station that I was on.
okay,
And yeah, they all had their own little styles and their little twerks that they do. and you pick up on it. You have like, you think, oh, I like that, but I don't like that.
Yeah.
And you kind of mix it up to your style and your flavor, really.
It's very true, because it's sort of what a lot of us do on Twitch, because, you know, I've been watching and doing streams and stuff for about 3.5 years. But like you say, I see things on other people's channels. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Take that little bit, or I like what they've done here. And like you say, then you create something different. But what I love is we're taking inspiration constantly from
Yeah.
people, and people are then taking inspiration from us, because obviously I assume once you started DJing, people really enjoyed what you were playing and then got inspired to do their own things.
Well, I hope so. I hope that everybody takes a little something from someone, you know,
Yeah.
and kind of, I hope that it's taken, but then it's adapted. I think that everyone has their unique flavor to add to whatever we are kind of inspiring them on. So
Yeah.
don't copy that person you're being inspired by, but kind of switch it up a little bit so it
Yeah.
meets you and you as your unique person. I think that's really important, to be unique and be yourself when you're out there doing what you're doing.
Definitely. So tell us about some of the first sort of major gigs you did that you can remember, or maybe your first proper sort of gig out.
Wow. I mean, I one of the gigs that always sticks with me is been both times in Africa.
Okay.
The first time was in the Gambia,
Yep.
and I went out there with the university that I was at the time, and it was incredible because it wasn't really planned either. It was sort of, Kat, you're gonna DJ, and I was like, what do you mean? You know, and I felt so happy, but a little bit overwhelmed, because
Yep.
the importance of playing in Africa for
Yeah. Yeah.
us and having the heritage of Caribbean, for me, is very important.
Yeah.
And it felt like I was going back home, and it was just one of these key moments for me. And when I played my first tune, it was by Beres Hammond, I Feel Good, and everyone got up and danced. I cried.
I
I
bet. Yeah.
cried when I first seen everyone dancing. I actually cried, and my lecturer at the time was like, wow, like, you're crying. I don't think they realized how deep and important it was to me, but it was very important to see people, when I'm back home, dancing and enjoying themselves. It was really important, that, and I pressed that play button, you know. So
Yeah.
I was happy.
That's
Um,
amazing. And was this like an indoor gig, or was it, because being Africa, was it outside
it
in
was
the heat?
outside. It was in the village.
Yeah.
I was invited to Mandua village. Very beautiful place, and welcomed with open arms, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just really, really a blessing. And even to this day, the people still message me, you know, on social media and all sorts of things, to ask me to go back out there. So I'm
You should
happy
do it.
that I've made an impact. Yeah, and I'm ready to go.
You need to do
Would
it.
love to go back. 100%. Felt, it's strange because I felt more at home in the Gambia than I have felt at home in the UK, and I've
Okay.
lived here all my
Yeah.
life.
My
It's a
my
strange.
Yeah, my wife's from South Africa, so we have been to South Africa a few times. We technically emigrated and it didn't quite go to
Yeah.
plan, so we had to come back. But she talks about feeling like going home, obviously not just because she was born there, but because there's something about Africa. It feels like the motherland as well. And you know, realistically, at some point, we've all come from there, haven't we? And I think
100%.
that's why it's got such a powerful impact. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that sounds amazing. How did you top that after that? After that
Well,
gig?
again, it was then I DJ'd in Cape Verde, um, and again, it was just one of those experiences. It was kind of off the hoof, kind of, yo, Cat, come and DJ, from the
Yeah.
locals. And I was like, all right then. Played some tunes, and the reception was just incredible. I really felt connected again, you know, with the people, and
Okay.
just having them dancing and enjoying what I was playing, and coming up to me and saying, Kat, we enjoyed what you were playing. And you know, it kind of just kind of connects you more to the music, to the people, and it just keeps continuing that cycle of, I love music.
And that must have been good, because you mentioned earlier that at school things were difficult because obviously you wanted to express your heritage. So this was a few years later, or
Yeah, so probably about 19, 20.
okay. So did
Um,
you think that then brought you back and people more accepting?
well, it's a strange one because I don't think I'm really going to be 100% accepted
Right.
in its entirety. Um, and people are probably wondering what that means, yeah. And the reason for that is because in many situations, I'm either too light or too dark,
Okay.
and it's about having that kind of understanding. And it takes a while. It's like a journey that you have to go on.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I've definitely gone on it, gone on that journey.
I mean, that must be very difficult because effectively you're almost stuck in limbo, stuck in the middle. Is that the sort of
Yeah,
feelings you get? Um, and has
yeah.
that improved over time? Obviously,
I
things
would
have moved
say,
on. Things, reality, the world's a very different place now than it was, say, 20 years ago, in terms of
yeah,
hopefully a bit more accepting. Have you noticed that sort of change?
there is there is a change in, and if you ask elders from in predominantly the Caribbean community, if you ask elders, they will say there is a change.
Okay.
I suppose now it's more kind of inwardly. You kind of get a feeling
Right.
that somebody doesn't like you because of either how you look or how you talk or how you whatever. You get that feeling, you know,
Okay.
um, and that's kind of the aspect of it. Or, you know, I mean, just recently there's been comments from myself that I could easily pass as white if I wanted to,
Right.
and it's kind of, I don't know if the word ignorant comes into it, but it's very frustrating because of
Yep.
it. You have to keep explaining your history and who you are, and I don't know why. you know?
It's yeah. I mean, that must be just on a basic level, just exhausting. Having to explain every time where you're from or why you are in a particular way or particular skin color. So, I mean, that must be really difficult. I mean, I assume it probably affects your mental health, and does it sort of stick with you when people say things?
It used to. I'm not gonna
Okay.
lie. When it first, like I said, in school, it used to stick with me, and it was hurtful. And I used to have to go to people, and had like loads of different support networks
Yeah.
that I went to that were predominantly Caribbean,
Okay.
and they would support me in things like counselling, learning mentors, whole heap of different people, and really helped guide me to who I am now.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not even. I don't know really. I mean, it does affect my mental health in the sense of I think I just get more frustrated that color comes into things.
Yeah.
Um, I think that it's a man-made ideology in my process. When I was born, I didn't think, oh, today I'm light skinned. It's kind of been
Yeah.
put upon us to think this way. And if we are representing reggae and we're representing about Bun Babylon and Bun the system,
Yeah.
surely we then can't follow the system in the same. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make
Yeah. Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
to me. But I'm always open to conversations because I know that sometimes people can just feel a bit intimidated seeing somebody who is light skinned wear red, gold, and green and so on. So it's just about having those conversations, and sometimes they are difficult, but they need to be done, and it's not really done too often from somebody who's light
Yeah.
skinned speaking on topics who may affect the black community, white community, and every other community around us because we're all mixtures, right?
Well, of course, and again, a few things come out of that. You've got One Love sort of right behind you, and again, the sort of message and the positivity from a lot of reggae and reggae artists is come together. Let's sort of love each other and all the rest of it. So again, saying that there is still difficulties there. But yeah, no, I know what you say. Get rid of the system, or forget the system, but we can't take the bits that we want to keep. It's either
Yeah,
we start afresh and everyone's equal, everyone's accepted for what or who they are. You can't pick and choose. You can't pick and choose.
Yeah, that's it. But I just think obviously there is this kind of level that, you know, because I have lighter skin, that I might be more privileged and
Right.
those sort of things. And I can understand that. I can see the history behind it. I can see why that might be thought of, you know. And
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that I haven't experienced some of the things that I've experienced, like stop and search, like being
Yeah.
abused, racially abused, would you believe it or not, by black people and white people. So these
Yeah.
experiences I've faced, and I think that having more conversations like we are having now is really important. It's not something that can be taken lightly. It needs to be spoken of in a way that helps everybody.
Yeah. Because obviously what you're describing is that you have received racist abuse in the same way that a black person might, a Chinese person, you know, whatever nationality. It doesn't make the abuse that you've suffered any less valid just because you're not part of a particular group. So you may not have
Yeah.
experienced everything they've experienced, but you've also had your own experiences,
Mm.
which, you know, would affect you. And again, that must be difficult, getting racist comments from both sides. Well, not both sides, but you know, black
Yeah.
and sort of white people,
Yeah.
because that again must be really difficult to deal with.
Yeah, it is difficult because for me personally, I would love for people just to ask me these questions rather than
Yeah,
assuming. I think it's the assumption part that kind of it gets on my nerves, just the ignorance behind it.
yeah,
Um, in or even if some people do know on my heritage and my identity, but will still have these kind of things like, "Oh, Kat, you need to just pass as white. It's easier for you." But
right,
then I
okay.
deny the other part of my identity will be denied, and I can't do that. I can't do that.
I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's almost like selling out. You know, if we compare it to what music is like, just playing music for the sake of it. You can't be something that you're not at the
Yeah.
end of the day. And we were talking about, you know, being you and spreading
Mm.
positivity and spreading a little bit of you. You can't say, well, things will be easier if I'm this or if I'm that, can you?
Yeah, and I think to be honest, it's kind of like not the easy way. I think that I'm sort of on two minds with this, that yes, I'm here to have these conversations and put this forward. But another part of me is like, are we still in that space where
Yeah.
we need to speak of this?
Yeah.
You know, it's one of these weird ones, but because my family, my immediate family, are every possible shade, color, whatever you want to say, you know, and
Yeah.
it's weird for us that color comes into it because we don't even we don't even like see each other like that. I don't go up to say somebody and say, "Oh, you're a black person, you're a white person." I say them by their name.
Yeah.
You know, I say hello, you know, whoever they are. So it's strange.
Yeah.
It's a strange concept that we still have, and it's very much so on either end of the scales, black, white, Chinese, Indian, whatever you may be. There's racism or colorism, as it's put now,
Yeah.
in many ways, on all levels, and it's actually disturbing. And I have said to some of my family members who are my skin tone that we need to educate our younger people so
Yeah.
they know and they can fight it when they get older. I don't want them to go through some of the abuse or what I've faced, because why would I want that, you know? I want them to be educated to be able to say something if that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you say, half of it is like, you know, we shouldn't really need to have these conversations because in 2023, these things shouldn't be an issue. But then again, if
Mm,
we don't have these conversations, these things are just going to disappear. And really, it's about saying, I'm a human. I've had this experience through how I've lived, and like we said earlier, that may help someone else. And why wouldn't you
mm.
teach? the younger generation about these things. You know, we teach, you know, I teach my daughter about racism and all of these
Mm,
things, you know, because you've got to do it from a young age. You know, we're mixed. My family from Cyprus, my wife's from like South Africa, so she's like
mm,
a mix. And at some point she may face it. So, you know, we teach her, and like you say, educating them and giving them the tools to be able to deal with this nonsense, which it is,
yeah,
really, isn't it?
yeah. It's like a, I don't know, like a, because I did a poem about it, being light skinned, and I got some feedback from that as well, in the sense of kind of like, well, why are we talking about this? It's kind of,
Yeah,
if you look like this, you're in this box. If you look like that, you're in that box. But what about all the people in between? You know, all the bits that people don't really see, or whatever it may be. Um, so it's really important. But like I said, it kind of irritates me as well, if I'm honest.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But you can't put people in boxes, because otherwise that'd be saying this person is only this person is only that. But we're made up of so many different things and influences. So why are people still trying to put people in boxes? And so if you're in that box, what are you different to everyone else? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah. I think, you know, the conversations will carry on, and I think they should carry on to make sure
Mm.
that it doesn't just become an accepted thing and just ignored, or, you know, people
Yeah.
abuse other
I,
people.
I I hope so. I really do hope so, that people can look beyond a skin color, look beyond and say, oh, you know, what's happening? Like I said, questions for me are absolutely fine. You
Yeah,
know, oh, what's your heritage? What's, you know, I don't mind that. It's the assumption, and being
yeah,
different to me, not really an issue, because difference creates revolutionaries, and, you know, it keeps it ticking.
yeah.
So I
Very
just think
true.
that we just need to be, I don't even know if it's open-minded anymore, but just kind of understanding that just because somebody looks like that doesn't mean they are just that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also that, you know, just because someone looks like that doesn't mean they are whatever your assumption that
Yeah.
is. Because that's the other
Mm,
thing. You know, at the end of the day, you know, there's what, 7 billion of us on this planet. You know, we're all
mm,
different, but the only thing we've got in common is we're all human. So, you know,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, hopefully one day we will get past it and we won't have to have these
Okay.
conversations.
Yeah.
Um,
Because there was a good while where I even toiled with the kind of concept of mixed race, dual heritage, and all these different terminologies,
yeah.
because I'm a human being. I mean,
Well, you're
it
cat.
was back.
You're
Yeah,
cat, aren't you? That's the thing.
before
Yeah.
it was it half caste and all these other terminologies,
Yeah.
mulatto, and all these other things that they used to call us.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could just call me Cat, you know. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. We'll get a little bit back to the music a bit now, and then there might be some other areas we sort of touch on. So you've described about buying records, and obviously you've done mixes for 45 Day, and obviously a lot of reggae is pressed just on 45.
Yeah.
When did you start getting into 45s?
Well, was kind of more so, I suppose, pre lockdown, more so, where I kind
Okay.
of got really into vinyl, 45, 7-inch, and I wanted to like see and understand vinyl, the history of vinyl, not just buy any
Yeah.
old vinyl, like I said. So it was more like the history and understanding, okay, why vinyl? Why is that happened, you know? And I got into it, and I wanted to understand as well the influences that vinyl has
Yeah.
had on the world. So there was kind of just a history, really. I wanted to know the history behind it. I wanted to know about these great producers like King Jammy, Sir Coxon, and so many more. Why did they go to vinyl? What was it about vinyl that was the interest?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just going to pause. I missed Mr. Musto raided in with his channel. He's just done a show and he's raided in. So thank you and welcome along, everyone. Okay, so you're wanting to learn about the history.
Mm.
I get that. Why does that not lead? Why does that lead you to vinyl? Is it because the music that came out was originally on vinyl, and because there's this history going back so many years? Is that what it is?
Yeah, and I think it was just the significance of vinyl, knowing that all these great artists started from that point of
Yeah.
vinyl. And like I said, I just wanted to know why vinyl? Why was vinyl the in thing? What was going on at that time? Is it the fact that that was the only thing available? What was it? And it just seemed like a really rich and powerful history, and I couldn't ignore it. So I started to understand vinyl, look at vinyl a lot more, and just start buying them because I already had the Rastaman Vibration album from
Yeah.
when I was a bit younger. So I knew what a vinyl was. I knew that it was a part of history and so on, but I wanted to understand it more. So kind of 2018, 2019, I really got into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, with any sort of genre of vinyl, but especially with reggae, because it goes back so far, there's obviously the originals, and there's obviously like reissues and things like here. Do you go for one or the other? Are you like a purist where you have to play original, or are you, as long as the record's good or as long as the song's good, it doesn't matter if it's like a reissue because it needs to be shared?
Um, I like the originals. Like I said, I'm quite I don't know, antique.
Okay.
I like I like the originals, but if there is, like, for example, um if there is something that catches my eye that's been remade, or
Yeah.
the beat sounds, I think, oh, that's getting me a bit. I like that.
Yeah.
I'll probably buy the original and buy that the copy as well,
Okay.
so that I have the original first, and then I might say, right, let's switch it up, and then play the next one. Yeah,
Because that's the beauty of reggae, and why I love reggae, because obviously you've normally got the vocal, and then you've normally got the version, or you've got like a dub version on the other side, and
yeah,
then you get obviously rhythms that have been used and used and used and used. Now, the interesting thing about reggae is you'd think if a rhythm was used that much, people would get bored of it, but it's what people
mm,
do on top of it with the vocal, and it's that the vocal becomes like another instrument, doesn't it, on top of the rhythm,
yeah,
and it becomes a completely different song, and it's great dropping a rhythm with one MC and then the same rhythm but with a different MC and then a slightly different version of the rhythm.
yeah.
But I mean, is that an important part of reggae for you as well?
Yeah, I think, well, if you look at the slang tang rhythm, I mean, that's been done
Yes.
over and over and over and over and over, and it can keep on continuing. But people never get bored of it. And again, it's a part of history. It's a part of understanding, where does that come from? Why is our music so loved? It's because we can drop the original, then drop the version, then drop the dub, mix it up again, and then go back to the original, and people will still love it the same way. Just based on the rhythm or what's being said. The message again is very key to then hit the rhythm underneath. It's like, I don't know, like a piece of the cake, isn't it? Yeah, and a bit
Yeah,
of icing.
but this is what I mean about that. I mean, because you look at a different genre, hip hop, for example. There
Mm,
may be a couple, sometimes maybe 3 or 4 songs that might have used the same sample, but they flipped it or whatever. There isn't like 100 hip hop songs with the same sample, whereas there is probably more 100 reggae records that have got the slang tang rhythm, and each
mm,
one of those is going to be amazing. And it's the same with rock. You don't get rock bands playing the same record for like 100 times. It's amazing that reggae's constantly being recycled and expanded and inspired from the past to create something new. um
mm.
I think that's why I love it. That's why I love the genre.
Yeah. Well, I was speaking to a producer about that, why so many of the rhythm can be kind of reused, if that's a good way to say. And to be honest, a lot of the producers have said that it's down to the fact of money. If you think
Okay.
about it, in Jamaica at those particular times, even now, you know, people struggle over there.
Yeah.
And so there's not always the opportunity or the time or the resources to keep on building rhythms, because that
Yep.
takes money, that takes time. So they're going to use or look at what's wow, or what is selling to the people that they can voice on, to be able to put something out there to showcase what they can do. And it makes sense. You know, it makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, that does. Because obviously they want to get themselves out as an artist.
Yeah.
It's a bit like like a rapper in hip hop. You've got to get your beats out there. And a lot of them do mixtapes, don't they? They record their raps over instrumentals of stuff. So it's the same sort of thing there, isn't it? I guess
Yeah.
you've got these artists who wanted to get themselves out there. In order to get yourself out there, you either have to producer or use a rhythm that's there. But again, it's amazing, what people do with music.
That's it, 100%. And I think that's why now people are beat makers, and they can create their own rhythms and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I mean, in some respects, it's a good thing if you are trying to create something for yourself, in that regard. But then in some respects, I like
Oh.
properly, if that makes sense. And they're looking at all of the instrument players, they're looking at this and that, rather than sitting in your room just hitting your beat pad or whatever goes on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of okay, I understand it for money aspects, but because of struggling, people struggle all across the world, but the struggling aspect of it, and trying to create something for yourself. And then of course, as time goes on, and if you become popular, if that's a word to use, if you become popular or you're recognized more, then you can then afford a producer, afford these things. But you have to get a leg up, I suppose.
Yeah, and like we were saying earlier, you have to start somewhere. Like you were talking about the community radio show giving you an opportunity and then starting. I guess at some point, someone has to give you that chance. But it's also the sort of the graft of it, isn't it? Because people think music is easy. Whatever, DJing's easy, but you have to really work hard at these things to get anywhere. So I suppose it's the same as he's teaching you that hard work pays off. If you work hard enough, you will get not necessarily all your goals, but you'll get some of your goals. And again, that's another positive message, isn't it?
That's it. And as well, if you look back at the history, in particular Jamaica, people had to audition to voice on a track or a rhythm. It wasn't a case of, oh, just come down to the studio and we'll just do whatever you want for it. It was more of, you're going to audition for this rhythm, or you're going to audition and show us what you've got, and then go from there.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to know that our elders, what they really went through, they went through a lot of, I'm going to say a lot of crap, to get this music out there. And it's so easily available now, but we can't forget the struggle that they went through. And it's really important from the likes of Bob and all the way down the list continues, Garnet Silk, Burning Spear, the whole of the foundational crew.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to say hello to a couple more people. We've got Shoestring Sound, is another huge reggae fan, and hopefully we're going to do a show similar to this coming up soon. And we got Jabons, who played on the stream at the weekend, and he played some brilliant. He's a reggae producer, a reggae DJ as well. Amazing guy. Yeah, great to have you here. Okay, so I think you were saying that you were DJing and things. Were you DJing before the pandemic, and did that then obviously suddenly stop as venues shut down?
Yeah, I've been DJing, like I said, from about 16, age 16. And really at the start when I was DJing, it was on radio stations, and it was more like at the West Indian Centre. I would go down there, play a couple of tunes, and feel the vibe of, okay, am I exciting people? Am I entertaining people? Are they liking what I'm playing?
Yeah.
And also, I was also very conscious that I am very different in my appearance. Some people find it difficult at first. They kind of do the two-lock kind of thing, So I was all very aware of that. And then as time progressed on, people just, it's like, oh, Kat, you're part of this family and that family, and the connection was made quite easily in
Okay.
Coventry.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I just kept on DJing and just kept on doing interviews with different artists and
Yeah.
trying to also allow people to hear artists that they probably would never hear
Yeah.
unless you're into reggae and you really delve deep. So I was more interested in the up and coming artists, or like I said, artists that you wouldn't really tune into.
Okay. Okay. So tell us about. I mean, I've been doing these sort of interviews probably, or maybe almost 2 years now. And obviously, we said earlier that you invited me onto your show on Instagram. Tell us about that. How did you first get into sort of doing interviews?
Wow. I mean, I think it started from Hills FM, like I said, with the community station. And we did interviews on there. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed listening to I was one of those kids that I like listening to an elder speak of what they went through. I wanted to know all of that. I wanted to hear all the kind of ism and schisms they went through and how they are here now, and the influences that they've made and created for us, this next generation.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to know, okay, how did you get into music? Why music? Out of all the outlays of creativity, why
Yeah.
music? And it was just kind of curiosity at first. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then when people were saying, Kat, you're really good at interviews, you should keep it going. I enjoyed it. And when you get, I mean, Beanie Man approached me and Yellow
Wow.
Man,
Wow.
these great artists, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I was overwhelmed at first, but I thought, wow, this is really cool. They've come to me. They've come to
Yeah.
me.
Exactly.
Um, little old me here in Coventry, and they've come to me, and it was a blessing.
Yeah.
To even conversate with them, and they took up their time to speak with me. And there's many great artists that have taken up their time to speak. And I find that with reggae in particular, that if you send an email to their manager, nine
Yeah.
times out of 10, they're willing to speak to you. It's
Now,
not that difficult, really.
yeah. Do you think that is because, like we were saying earlier, in reggae, there's a lot of a message. There's always a message, isn't there? And generally it's positive. Do you think it's just, if someone, I mean, I know what it's like with me. If someone asks me to do an interview, I'm like, of course I'm going to do it because, it's a chance for me to get to know the other person, collaborate, and also spread the message that I want to talk about and what I'm doing and how it's affecting other people. So I guess maybe there's an element of that as well. It's like, if someone wants to talk to you, let's have a conversation, because you just don't know what's going to come out of it. What connection you're going to make. Like we said earlier, one person listening might get helped by it. Do you think there's an element of that?
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. I think as well, I think that reggae in particular, there's not really a driving person for it. It's very, at this moment in time, it's very individual, or you have a group of people that are doing something.
Yeah.
And I hope, and really do hope, that we become more as one in reggae genre, no matter where you're from in the world,
Yeah.
but having that one kind of aspect to it, rather than here, there, and everywhere you've got people doing things. It's harder to connect to. And interviews for me were and is about connecting people. So,
Yeah.
you might do an interview, like we're doing this interview now, and somebody might say, oh, I'm going to go and check out Burning Spear because Kat mentioned it.
Yeah.
Bam, you've got somebody then going to check out Burning Spear, and it's that
Yeah.
kind of mentality that I personally hope will create people to go and check out for real.
And it's very similar to what we do and why a lot of us love Twitch. You're generally on Instagram, but the way Twitch works here is we had a raid in from Mr. Musto. So basically, people were watching his show, and he was at the end of his show. He's like, right, let's go somewhere else, and then you take them to another channel. So they brought him here. And then you're always like, right, follow this person, go and follow this person. And we do it all the time. We're constantly meeting new DJs, new viewers, new people. And you're constantly really positive saying, go and check this DJ out. They're brilliant. So obviously I get people on my show like you. And like you say, people will not just check out the artist you're talking about. They're going to check you out and see what you're up to, maybe give you a follow, see what you're then promoting. And then it's just growing this community, isn't it? You know, that's what I love about what's been achieved, certainly in the last few years through what we're doing.
100% agree with you. And we need more of it. We need more of this connection and trying to, I don't know, just help each other. You know, if you're doing something that is uplifting and helping the community, why not help you? Why not support you? To me, it makes sense. Or if you're an artist and you're trying to promote conscious music, I'm all for that. You know, it's a bit different if it was like a bit more raw or a bit more slack, as we like to say. I can respect the craft of it, but I'm not necessarily going to play it, if I'm honest.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Ed Bond is here as well. Good evening. He says more power to the helpers.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good. I like that, Ed. We might use that again. But it's spreading a positive message. It's community. So tell me a little about your community. Obviously, you've got Instagram, you've got followers. I think you also DJ with other people as well in collaboration.
Yeah, so I have Instagram, Facebook. I kind of use all the platforms that people would be on. I also have Sisters in Dub. We're three sisters, and we're all from different backgrounds, different mindsets, but our predominant, I would say, similarity is that we all have Caribbean heritage, and we all love sound system and music. So it kind of makes sense. But we all have different ideas and different perspectives. So that kind of can spice things up, if you want to say that as well.
So tell us a little bit about that. So if there's three of you DJing, do you, I mean, I DJ with other people all the time. Do you do like a back-to-back, one tune each? Do you do like half-hour sets each? How do you work it if you're doing an event with the three of you?
So predominantly how it works is I'm the, if you want to say, the main DJ.
Okay.
And kind of flexible in CDs, vinyls, and so on. Whatever suits what's going on. And then we have another sister called Daniela, and she'll play vinyls here and there. Like if she particularly likes a tune, she'll say, Kat, can we add this tune in? And then I'll create a set list around that after we've decided what tunes we're going to play, and we all kind of participate on what tunes we might play. And then I kind of create an order, because I like things to be in order so they make sense to the person that's listening.
Okay. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Well, so when you say make sense, is it like from sort of old to new, or is it just slow to fast? You know, what is it you mean that you program it?
It could be any of those, but I'm not really a fan of I don't know, like you could have, just for example, you have kind of a hip hop tune at the beginning, and then the next tune's like Toots of the Maytals. You know, it don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
It just doesn't flow for me at all. So I'm quite meticulous that whatever we play, we have it in an order so that it makes sense to the listener. You want it to feel good for them.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and again, it's about messages as well.
I like that idea. So you is it almost like you sort of get together and play tunes to each other and say this would be good, and then that would be good, and then I like that you're sort of putting together like a set, a bit like a band would do, because it's a collaboration, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes we do. I mean, we all listen to music. All three of us listen to music. So, for example, Sharal might say, "Oh, I like this tune." That's the other sister. She might say, "Oh, I like this tune. I want it to go on this set list." And then Dan might do the same. And then we kind of pick 6, 7 tunes each if it's an hour set list.
Yeah.
And then from that, I'll pop it into an order so that it flows. And then I'll say, okay, which ones are on vinyl, which ones are on CDs. Majority of the tunes are on CD just based on the venues usually are digital.
Yeah.
But then, every so often we drop some vinyls, and Dan will bring some vinyls along. I will every so often bring some vinyls, and the same with Sherelle, she'll bring some as well. So we kind of mix it up, but the order just has to sound right and good. Yeah.
And obviously, you've talked about acceptance in terms of being light skinned. Obviously, as three women, have you come across difficulties in the industry, or because it's reggae, it's more accepting than perhaps some other genres?
I mean, it's a difficult one, if I'm honest, because we're all different shades in
Yeah.
Sisters in Dub. We've got, like I said, all different shades, all different aspects of. I don't know if it's black. Is it black spectrum, I suppose you could call it, or different color shades, whatever it may be. So we all have our own ideas and opinions on what it means to be black, I suppose. And so my idea of it is probably different to Dan and Sherelle, in that respect. Just because their parents are probably more forward in expressing the Caribbean culture.
Right.
Whereas my mum found it quite difficult because she is also light skinned, so she found it hard as well, to express her Caribbean culture, just because of the amount of abuse and stuff she got. So
Right.
it's but for me, I wanted to change that cycle and be like, I don't care if you don't like me, don't talk to me. I can't help of my identity or my skin color. I'm very out there with it. I don't care, to be honest, in that sense.
Do you, I mean, your mum having gone through all of that, were you aware of that? Did she talk about it, or was it only later in life that she sort of opened up and said these things had happened?
Not really. My mum is very quiet on it, really.
Okay.
And how I sort of knew that I was Caribbean, because I didn't have an idea when I was younger, but how I sort of started to know was my grandfather came to my mum's house, which is my mum's dad,
Right.
and he was a black man. And at that time, me and my sister were a bit like, who's this man? We never met him before. We
Right.
didn't know who he was. We
I
were
mean, so
just
did
like,
did you
who's this
not? You
man?
didn't even know, your mum hadn't told you that he was black.
Yeah, it wasn't brought
Just wasn't
up.
spoken. Okay. So that must be
Yeah,
difficult to sort of, as a young person, comprehend at that time.
it was difficult, but I could, once my mum kind of explained her story, I suppose. I think that's what we have to remember. Everyone has stories, and
Yeah.
my mum sort of explained to us like the abuse she got and kind of what she faced, and these sort of issues of kind of, I don't know, just feeling, where do I go? I'm
Yeah.
black and I'm white, but no one's accepting me, and it's hard. You have
Yeah.
to keep pushing through, and like I said, for me, it was different. I wanted to change that narrative. Like, I'm gonna say I'm black, whether you accept it or not. I don't, I
Yeah.
don't care really in that
Doesn't
regard. But
matter.
my mum did care. My mum had this, like, she did care, and it hurt her quite deeply. It did, and sometimes it still does now. She still thinks about it, and you know, but she's my mum in it, so yeah.
Well, like you say, hopefully the next generation further down is going to be
Mhm.
different, and they won't be having these conversations like we sort of said earlier. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, like you say, everyone's got a story, and there's all this sort of trauma that sort of comes down through the generations, isn't there? That you don't realize, and it's not a lot of it isn't spoken about, and a lot of it's hidden away, and that it must
yeah,
have been very difficult. Must have been very difficult, and obviously for you, as well, you've described difficulties as well.
yeah.
Um, okay. Um, let's get on to something a little bit lighter. I saw some photos from a festival I think you've just come back from, Beat Herder.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
Yeah.
it. And I saw you put something about lots of mud. So
Oh god.
how was because I'll then tell you a story about our Manchester thing last weekend. But yeah, tell us how the festival was.
it was a fantastic festival. I was down in Skipton, that's where it was. And I did the festival with two little girls. They're called Gabriella and Jasmine T.
Yeah.
And I was DJing and selecting for them. And wow, I mean, the crowd, the energy in the tent, because we played on Bush Rocker Hi-Fi.
Okay.
Fantastic sound, like really loved how the sound was set up and everything. And then it was just, there was like a rainfall on the Saturday. The mud on the Sunday was like a swamp. It was incredible.
Amazing.
It was incredible. It was you couldn't walk. I was holding on to Gabrielle and Jasmine's dad. I was holding on to him, and he
Right.
was carrying my things. It was like you were going through a swamp. It was incredible.
It's yeah, the Bourbon saying love bush rockers. And yeah. But there's still something about it, isn't there? Being at I've been at festivals like that, and the stuff you do to play music or to go and listen to music is amazing, wouldn't it? You wouldn't do it normally, would you? You wouldn't go traipsing through mud
Yeah.
to go to the supermarket or something, would you? You'd be like, oh, I can't be bothered. But because it's
Yeah.
music, everyone comes together, don't they?
That's it. And the energy in the tent was incredible. You put on the first reggae tune and the second reggae tune, more and more people were coming in. And then we started the two little girls, Gabrielle and Jasmine, they started their set with singing and that, and the tent just kept filling up, filling up. And
Yeah.
you can see people with their wellies just struggling to get through the mud to get to us. And it was incredible. But yeah, the mud was wild. If you were there, people, you know what I'm talking about. It was wild.
Yeah. Well, De Bourbon said he played at Beat Herder last year, and it was his favourite festival for a while, and he spent all weekend at Bush Rockers.
Oh yeah.
It sounds good. I might have to try and get there next year. Actually, it sounds like it could be a good one. And let's talk a little bit about sound systems. Then, obviously, one of the most amazing things about reggae music and dub music is hearing it on these specially built, amazing bespoke systems. So, what is it for you that makes, you said that system was really good. What was it about that particular system and the setup that you enjoyed?
Well, I think it was. So I'm quite into frequency as well.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I like a sound that doesn't just bust up the bass and it just kills you kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like that, and they didn't do that. They were really conscious of the music that they were like how they kind of set up their music. They were really conscious of that, and I could tell because the sister that was controlling the controls, and she was making sure everything was level and nice, and when you went up to the speakers, it wasn't like a hurtful sound. It was more a
Clean.
clean and really
Yeah.
like you could feel the message, if that makes sense, and the frequency of it. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it for that. And if I'm honest, I feel a bit sad anyway, because sound system is a really important tool for educating the people, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's shifted too tough. We still have it, but I miss Shaka. Shaka sadly passed away,
Yeah.
and I miss him, and I think that's why no one can really live up to Shaka and how he put
Yeah.
his message and things forward. But I am hopeful that sound system, in particular Europe, is really getting into sound system, really trying to understand what sound system is, and elevating it. And you can't beat it. If I'm honest, you can't beat it.
It's, yeah. I mean, I used to go to University of Dub. I've been up to the West Indies Club in Leeds. I've been there and experienced these, but it's only more recent I'm getting back into it. I went to Boomtown last year and heard some amazing sound systems, and it's then that again I realised how important the sound system is. We're so used to going into like crappy pubs or whatever, the sound's just not great. But then when you experience sound properly, and like you say, it's all about the frequencies. It's individual frequencies, taking out all the sort of range and just focusing
Yeah.
on each frequency. And if you can get all of those perfect, it then
Mm.
becomes, as the bourbon says, nice and warm, and as Polly Ever
Yeah,
After says, a hug of sound.
that's it.
Because there's nothing better, is there, than going up to a sound system and feeling the bass, and like
Mm.
you just feel it in your body, and then you just feel the
Yeah.
music, and that's something you don't get with a lot of other types of genres of music.
Yeah, and I think I like the teamwork as well. Like, to make a sound happen, 9 times out of 10, you need at least 5, 6, possibly more to make that sound be what it is.
Yeah,
I like
not
the
not
teamwork.
just to carry it, because obviously these sound systems are big, so you need 5 or 6 people to carry it, but then you need 5
Yeah,
or 6 people to run it, don't you, with the frequencies and everything else.
yeah, that's it. So it's all these kind of sound men, sound women coming together to create this sound. I like that idea. We need more of it, if I'm honest. I really love that. And the fact that, when you watch a sound and who does what, so you have a box boy or a box girl, you'll have somebody engineering, somebody looking at this or looking at, and it's really interesting to see what they're doing and why they're doing it. I love that.
Air Adam's saying that's how Kool Herc was killing people in the early days of hip hop. He came with the sound knowledge and equipment from his Jamaican roots.
Mm,
So there you
yeah,
go. It all goes back to, because we play a lot of 45s, but we play a lot of old stuff, because some of the reggae stuff that we're playing is like 50s, early ska and 60s and 70s. And again, coming back to things being a piece of history, it's amazing having that bit of history in your hand from 1960 or 1970 or whenever. But then to hear it on a sound system. Now, obviously, you say you play some CD, some vinyl.
yeah.
Maybe a controversial question, but can you hear the difference? Does the vinyl on a big sound system sound that much different to a digital version?
Um, Not if you get a good download, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess.
But there's nothing beats the crackle of that vinyl.
Yeah,
When you put the needle down, it's the crackle, and um, nothing beats that for me. But again, if you get like sometimes what I'll do is I'll go to the artists or I'll go to the managers and I'll say, I really want this track. It's an amazing track. Could you send me it, the proper copy,
yeah,
like the efficient copy, so I could play it out? And like I said, 9 times out of 10,
yeah,
you get sent it, unless there's an issue with it or whatever it may be. But 9 times out of 10, if you have that communication with artists, with managers, producers, they'll happily give that to you so that you can promote who they are.
yeah. Because every time we play a record, you're promoting the artist on that record, aren't you? You're
That's it. Yeah.
saying, I love this record. I think you're going to love it as well. Check it out. And like you say,
Mm,
like you mentioned tonight, people are going to go away and check out some of these artists and be like, okay, I haven't heard that one, or I need to check out more of them. So I guess why wouldn't they give it to you?
yeah.
It's
Um,
come back to the crackle though. I saw Abashanti at St Mary's Castle in Hastings a little while ago, and obviously he does the one deck dub
yeah.
plates, and it's just in between. It's just like the crackle and the reverb of the record, and watching that, you're like, yeah, you wouldn't get that sort of crackle from a CD, but yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. I'm going to say hello to T2 Funk as well. And yeah, talking of records, T2 Funk sent me his new record. So I
Nice.
played it last night and then played it out. And again, it's promoting artists and also promoting your friends and building the
Yeah.
community. And yeah, and people are going to go and buy stuff. If they hear you play it, I'm sure people go and pick it up, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. And you know what? I really give thanks for all of the sound men and sound women throughout the years that have kept the music going, kept the
Yeah.
music as it should be. Because, and same with the radio presenters, radio DJs. Because to be fair, reggae, there is a commercial aspect to it, but it is, if you want to hear conscious roots reggae dub, it's not really played on these commercial things.
Yeah.
It's down to DJs like ourselves, it's down to the sound men and women, and it's down to people just talking, oh, have you checked this tune, blah blah blah. It's about that, and that's what
Yeah.
keeps it more more kind of alive and for the people, you know.
Yeah,
And
it's like you say, it takes. It's a family, isn't it? It looks like it's one person, but it's similar to what we do on here. We've got moderators, people who are there in the chat to look out for the community and all the rest of it. But again, it's more than one person, and it's just
yeah.
bringing people together. It's so important.
Mm.
One of the things we do, and I've just remembered, I might not have asked you to do this before the show, but I normally ask people to pick 3 45s generally, but it can be records because I sort of put you on the spot maybe. Mark Lancaster on the very first episode we had asked the question, what 45s lift your spirit? So we've always asked on the show, what 45s lift your spirit? So if you had to choose 3 particular songs, it doesn't have to be 45s, but if there was 45s, cool. If you had to choose 3 tracks that lift your spirits and you'd recommend to people, what would they be?
So the first one would be Nat King Cole, Autumn Leaves. That tune, yeah, man, it's a nice tune. I like the Chris, the Chris of his voice, and I actually heard of that tune from the Crown Prince of Reggae, Dennis Brown.
Yes.
He said that was his favorite tune. This was a good few years back. Listened to an interview that he did, and I was like, Nat King Cole, who's that? And I
Yep.
fell in love. I fell in love from then. So every Sunday, that is a tune that I play every Sunday when I'm cooking food or doing what I need to do. That's one of my tunes that I play. I suppose this isn't, I don't know if it's uplifting, this next one, but it is for me. It brings back a memory of kind of a revolution aspect to my life, which
Yep.
was a tune that was recommended to me by my uncle. He said to me, listen to this tune by Steel Pulse. It's called the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
It was a tune. Well, what happened was I was chased from school to this greenery area for about 3 miles.
Right.
I was terrified, scared,
Yeah.
and I was chased. And when I eventually got home, my uncle was there, and I spoke to him, told him what happened, and he was like, "Check out this tune. This tune has influenced me in my life. But if you change the words Ku Klux Klan to whoever it is, the bully, the police officer, this or
Yeah.
that, it's still relevant." And since then, it's never been a tune that I haven't played. So it's a big tune.
Wow. Well, that is a big tune. Yeah. And I guess there's so much wrapped up in that tune, isn't there? One obviously your experience, but 2, obviously your uncle, and the fact that he was able to pass down a record that he thought
Yeah,
could help you. And this is what you were talking about a little bit earlier in the show, wasn't it? That, education and that message, isn't it? Yeah, that's an amazing choice. Amazing choice.
and I'm kind of toiling between Bob Marley, Rastaman Vibration, and Peter Tosh, a tune called "You Can't Blame the Youth." Um, I'm kind of torn with them too. I like both of them.
Both good though. Both good.
Yeah,
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Well, Kat, it's been amazing. I'm just going to set the raid. I think we spoke about most of the things we were going to talk about, and I feel that we may possibly do like a part 2 or something different next time. I think next time it might be cool to sort of play some music to each other as well.
yeah, man.
I play some tunes, and then obviously you play some tunes, because it's great talking about these, and it'd be great to listen to all those 3 that you mentioned. But let me just set this raid. So we're going to basically take, in about 2 minutes time, our viewers to one of our good friends, Svalansky, who celebrated his 1K recently, and he's been a big part of this community. But I just want to say thank you so much, firstly, for having me on your show, and thank you for then coming on to my show, and thank you for being so open and honest,
Yeah,
and frank. And I think, like you say, the discussions, we shouldn't have to have some of these discussions, but we're right to have them, because if someone listens, then they're going to help. And thanks to people being here. We had Polly, and Mr. Hoffman, and De Bourbon, and everyone else who sort of tuned in. Is there one last message you want to say to people before we go?
Firstly, I just want to say thank you to you, for putting this together, actually thinking of this idea, because we need more discussions, and it's
Yeah.
great that you have put that forward, and I appreciate you doing that, and yeah, man, big up yourself. Firstly.
Thank
But I think a message that I would just say to people is to be themselves, be unique to who you are.
Yeah.
And if there is anybody out there who is going through, I suppose, as they refer to it, mixed race identity, or even just identity, and they want to speak about it, I'm always open to conversations. I think it's really important, just to have somebody to talk to, even if it's about music, whatever it may be. I'm happy for people to contact me and talk to me. Yeah, man.
That's great. We put the Instagram in the chat, and yeah, people can follow you on there. It's been great. Thank you so much. If you hang on there for a minute, we'll just have a quick chat afterwards. But yeah, thank you so much again, Kat. And this can be watched back on YouTube and listen back to a Mixcloud probably tomorrow. So take it easy.
Yeah, man. You too. Bless up.